So, hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio Reading and for my YouTube channel. And super excited by my guest today, who is soon to or has joined the cast of Neighbours, an amazing actor, the fantastic Jason Wilder. How are you, Jason?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time you're taking out to talk to me about all my stuff. So
No,
that's pretty
it's an
cool.
absolute pleasure. And I mean, let's start off before we get into Neighbours. Let's talk a bit about kind of where you got into acting. How did you first become a lover of acting? How did you get into it?
I mean, I think as a kid, like most people, just really admire the film, especially being a kid from the 80s. It was down to Video Easy and Blockbuster and all that sort of stuff. So it was always a Friday night. Video Easy, 10 for 10. But then my dad sort of realized that I was a bit of an extroverted kid, I guess you would call it, and sort of looking for something to channel that into that wasn't just sport. It was very sporty and very into the athletics. But so yeah, he joined me up with a casting agent down on the Gold Coast that was also had like a acting school alongside it. And within 2 weeks, I was on Scooby Doo as just one of the extras in Tent City, and that was it. That was I was on. I was hooked. The bug had taken root. And yeah, it was just such a juggernaut of a film, and seeing how it all came together, and like you see the mechanics of what the crew and everything do, and how the directors work, and like I just sort of sat there, kind of, I guess, in awe of the whole process. And I think that was it for me. I was in. That was game over. There's nothing else. And yeah, growing up, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I thought I'll do something where I can play a bunch of different things and just have a tasting platter, I guess. But yeah, that was how it all played out.
I mean, Scooby Doo is quite a cool first gig. I mean, obviously that was the film that
The
Rowan Atkinson.
best.
Rowan Atkinson was in that film, and he's like acting well here in the UK, acting royalty. I imagine all around the
Royalty.
world. So, what did you get to
Yeah.
meet him?
No, but I got to see him work, and I it was one of the scenes on the pier as the core four were walking down, and they just got a shot on. They were just doing a single on him, and again, like super green, didn't know anything about anything, and he was just delivering this one line like 20 times in 20 different ways, and I was like, huh. Like I never thought of like I thought you just say it and that was it. Like he was just giving options for the director, and I was like again, just such a learning experience to see how all of that happened. And I was just yeah, it blew me away, and I was like, I guess you every experience you have as an actor like adds to the bag of tricks of when you're seeing far more experienced actors work, and then you're like, oh, that's interesting how he did that, and I didn't really think of it in that way because, again, like as a kid, I thought that everything would just be shot chronologically as well. Like it's well, we're doing this scene now, and then we're doing this scene, and it's like no, you shoot to the location, and so it's yeah, all these things that sort of put everything into place as you're watching movies and never realizing how it's all done. So yeah, that was it. I was in. I was in. That was it. Hooked, as they say.
Now, obviously, at the moment, we're super excited that you're making your debut this week on Neighbours as Clint.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
first, how did that first come about? How did you kind of get the role of Clint on Neighbours? And I mean, were you a fan of the show beforehand?
I Huge fan growing up. Huge fan. It was always Neighbours and never Home and Away. Not to say anything bad about Home and Away, but Neighbours was my show growing up. Um, and yeah, Toady, the Kennedys, and all that. Like, and then you like when you get to set, you sort of see this like all the pictures of all the old school guys that were there back in the day, and you're like, oh, yeah, I remember that. So it was like a bit of a nostalgic thing. I hadn't watched it in years, and just so happens that I had a base in Melbourne at the time, and the audition came up, and my agent was like, "Hey, you wanna go ahead for this?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's go for it." And so I hired a local actress to help me put the tape down. Was quick and easy. I think it was like two or three scenes, and then sent it off and set and forget. Like I think once you you've been around for long enough, you kind of do the audition and you forget about it. And then I think a week or two later, my agent called. He's like, "Hey, you're in the mix for this one." I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sweet, cool, that'll be fun." Um, and then I think maybe a week later, that was it. We were on. It was go time. I had no idea who I was going to be working with because they use different names in the auditions, so no idea what was happening. It wasn't until I was because I live on the Gold Coast. I was driving down to Melbourne. I stopped in at my mate's place in Sydney, and that's when I got the first scenes through. And so it was about a fortnight beforehand, and I was like, okay, who are these people that I'm talking to? So quickly back onto IMDb to check out who it was. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like let's go to work. Now I can put faces to the names when I'm running through the dialogue and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was all very exciting, and to be working with Andy Jones was super pumped and super cool. So absolute veteran and such a sweetheart. It was happy days.
What was it like when you first stepped foot on the set? Because, I mean, I imagine that must have been quite a surreal moment for you. Was it quite strange?
I think because I'd never worked on something like that before. So before you step onto set for the first time, you go in and you do your makeup tests, you do your wardrobe, all that sort of stuff. So I kind of got a little bit of a feel for the layout and how everything works. And I don't know if you know this, but everything is shot in one compound, except for Ramsey Street itself. Like that, to me, I was like, oh, okay, like oh, we got to travel to set, which is a 2-minute walk this way to a completely different location. So that to me was a bit of a trip. I was like, okay, so, and it's a really well-oiled machine, like everybody knows what they're doing. There's usually two, sometimes three crews running at once, and it's bang, 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 go, go, go. For me as a performer, I'm always no matter what the job is, I'm always nervous in my first scene. My first scene, I'm like, oh, here we go. Oh, it's real now, like let's go to work. And then after the first take, I'm fine. Everything sort of cools down, that heightened anxiety and the adrenaline sort of calms down a bit, and then you get to get in the groove a bit more and have a bit of a play. So but yeah, jumping on and seeing, like Harold's and stuff like that, I was like, oh, cool. It was a bit of a trip. And I think on my last day, I got to go to Ramsey Street, which I had never done before, and that was pretty surreal. I was like, okay, this is cool. This is pretty cool. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I mean, when you were kind of being first told about Clint, what did they tell you? What was kind of fed you about where, about the character and what to expect? What can people look forward to?
Very, very little. Nice guy, uh, quite learned and educated and old soul, sweetheart. Uh, yeah, just all the things that naturally come to me, of course. um, but yeah, he was just a good sort of hopeless romantic kind of guy, and obviously you can read it on the pages pretty quickly, and it's not until you sort of get a little bit further down that you want to sort of see where his motivations are, like, and so there was a few different conversations that were had, and where is the character going? Where's it going to be taken to? Um, but yeah, just a lovable, nice guy that's got the hots for Jane.
And also, it's a great story because it's one of these things where you don't often get to see sort of an older woman with a younger man on telly. It always tends to be the
Absolutely,
other way
yeah,
round. And I
yeah, in
think
life as well. So
exactly,
yeah,
and it's a great way to kind of say to people that there's two people can get on. It doesn't matter the big age gap. As long as
mm.
as long as it's legal and everything, there's no issue
Yeah, of
with
course,
with,
yeah.
with an age gap. And actually, like you say, they have so much in common.
Mm. Yeah, I think the way that they were written together to have that connection on books and literature and all that sort of stuff was quite clever because I think for Clint, it wouldn't have mattered if she was 35 or 65. He's so attracted to her mind, and that's what he sees first and foremost. Um, and that's why they get along so well. It's just yeah, he's smitten. Um, I'm not exactly sure how far into the story, so I don't want to give anything
Yeah,
away.
so
But
so far we've just seen the introduction, we've met you, we've seen the first date. So obviously we can't say too much, but
mm,
we do know that Byron obviously is a little bit concerned, let's say,
oh,
about
Byron, yes,
which
Byron.
you can understand because obviously if you know someone will be
Oh,
protective towards their mother. Um,
if that's my mum, absolutely. Who is this guy? You know, yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, the other interesting thing about Clint is that we don't know much about him. We obviously, you know, we can't talk too much about, you know, what's going to happen.
Hmm.
But for you, getting to grips with the character and kind of getting to know him, that it must be great to be able to kind of get your teeth into the role and really sort of take it on.
Yeah, yeah. I think with any role, it's you know, you get to explore that character, and it's usually just an extension of a version of yourself, right? Like, and yeah, I think Clint was super easy and fun to play, and he was, you know, complex in certain ways, and I guess very obvious in others. Um, but as far as he was concerned, like, yeah, it was a joy to play that character and bring it to life, you know. I was always excited to get the scenes and see what was coming up next. Yeah, it was a bit of a blast. So, and then you know, you look back and it was just kind of like this whirlwind as well because, you know, sometimes you'll get 15, 20 scenes to do and you're like, oh, like where are we in the story in this one? You know, like you get to that kind of point and then it's yeah, but for the most part he was just a fun, lovable guy to play.
And I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
and
probably the best way.
I was going to say the other thing we must talk about is Annie Jones. Just what an icon she is. What a fantastic woman she is. I've had her on this show in the past. What was it like to get to work so closely with her and to have those scenes together?
If I find anybody that can say a bad word about Annie Jones, I'd be buying a lottery ticket right after because it's too rare. She is just an absolute delight and just a good human being. And I remember my first day, like I sat down next to her and she was like, "Do you want to do a read through?" I was like, "Yep, yes, I do. Let's do that because first day, first nerves, let's go." And she was just great, you know, like just an absolute gem. I can't. And funny, she's just funny. Like she'd be doing a little dance before a scene and all that sort of stuff. Or like when we finished the scene, she'd be like, "We smashed that." And I was like, "Yeah, we did. That was great. All right, on our way." You know, wardrobe change and let's go kiss somewhere. You know, that's what's happening next. So you know, she was just a yeah, and to be so experienced and to just have the time for everybody as well. You know, she's just a delight.
I mean,
Can't say a bad word about her.
one of the first sort of glimpses we saw of Clint was, I believe it was at the end of last year, we saw in the teaser clips for what's to come in 25. There are some
Oh,
scenes coming up, I believe, between yourself and Annie in bed, let's say. So we have
don't
seen
know what
little
you're talking about. Don't know what you're talking about.
But what's that like to film scenes like that? Is that a weird experience to you know be in bed with someone and film it?
Always, always. I don't know of anybody that can say that, you know, being in bed with somebody when there's 20 people watching and cameras in your face and you're being directed on how to move and like where your head should be and, you know, like canoodle this way. Like there's nothing natural about it. It is the most, it's just weird. It's just always weird. Yeah, I don't think there's been a time where I've just been like, yeah, that was great, you know, like that was the best time ever. Um, so yeah, I think it's I don't know, I don't really know too many people that you can say that it's an absolute pleasure and a joy. I don't know unless you're doing a scene with your wife or something like that. I don't know.
I mean, I say one of the questions I like to ask my guests, and I think it's quite an interesting one, is if you were to meet Clint in real life, could you be friends? Do you think you'd get on? Have you got enough in common?
I think we'd be acquaintances. Yeah, I think there was enough that I could see within myself and Clint because I love reading. I'm a bookworm, but I think the types of books that we read are very, very different. I like the June series, like anything Raymond E. Feist and that sort of stuff. Yeah, I can't say can't even remember the books that we were rattling off. But yeah, some of the names I'd never heard before in my life. You know what I mean? So I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, potentially, but acquaintances. I'd say acquaintances.
Now, obviously, Neighbours this year hits the big 40th anniversary. It must be quite nice to know that you were a part of, or sort of there during the 40th year. That must be quite an honor.
I mean, I didn't know that
Did
until
you
now,
not?
but yeah,
Wow.
no,
Yeah, no,
no, I didn't
this year,
know.
40 years of Neighbours this year.
Wow, wow. It's got to be the longest running show in Australia, surely.
I think it must be because Home and Away, I think, is a few years shorter, I believe. So I think it must be one of the
Yeah.
longest running Australian soaps.
Wow. 40 years. Huh.
There
I
you go.
mean, great. Yeah, absolute. I think, it being a part of it in general, regardless of if it was the 40 years or not, was just kind of like a surreal moment because it's so synonymous with, I guess, Australian history, at least modern history. It's like it's always been this consistent that's always been on. So yeah, I think getting the opportunity to jump on and be a part of it and sort of, I remember, I think it was yesterday, I got a notification on IMDb that I'd been credited with Neighbours. I was like, oh, that was a bit of a chuff moment. Like I was like, oh, that's a bit sweet, bit cute. So yeah, it's just one of those things, man. It was kind of like, yeah, I was pretty chuffed. I was pretty chuffed to get Neighbours. I don't know if my daughters will watch it, but I'm pretty chuffed to get it.
And I mean, we know that it's only a guest role at the moment. Do you think, if asked, would you go back sort of more permanently,
Oh,
or?
in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Absolutely. Um, yeah, there was rumblings, I would say, of and yeah, a bit of talk. But yeah, to TBD, like who knows? It's one of those things that it could be, yeah, that was great and off into the ether and see you later. But yeah, if they came and called my agent and were like, "Do you guys want to do another 3 months?" I'd be like, Yes, I would. Let's go to work. I'd be all about it.
And also,
Absolutely.
we're hoping this will be some nice happiness for Jane because she thoroughly deserves something nice to happen after the kind of the disaster in love she's had over the past few months, let's say.
I'm not at liberty to say nothing. This is my poker face. It's.
Now, I mean, outside of Neighbours, what else have you been up to recently? Tell us about, any other projects you've got going on that you can talk about. What else is going
Uh,
on?
None that I can talk about.
We
Um,
love that. We love that.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a couple of things in the pipeline at the moment. So just waiting to see. They're all shooting on the Gold Coast, which is great because it's nice and close to home. Other than that, man, I got two beautiful daughters that I love and cherish and spend every moment that I can with them. So they're getting ready for high school next year. So it is all hands on deck. So yeah, currently in the process of I've just sold my apartment on the coast, and now we're house hunting up in Brisbane to be closer to their school. So other than that, mate, it's beach and enjoying the time and a bit of travel up and forth, back and forth from Noosa to go and see a friend of mine up there. But yeah, it's just a cruisy life. I also do some support work on the side, and one of my clients who I adore dearly is probably going to watch this. So, hi, Les. I love you. I miss you. And I will see you on tomorrow, actually. And then, yeah. So, other than that, it's just day to day, really.
And I mean, I imagine enjoying the Australian summer. Here in the UK, it is bitterly cold at the moment as we're in the middle of our winter. And I mean,
Oh,
would you ever visit the UK? Is it somewhere you've ever been? Would you like to come to the UK?
I have been to the UK, and sadly, when I went, you were in a heat wave, and I wanted to experience the cold, miserable, dreary version of London. But no, it was like being at home. I was like, not vibing this. But no, I one of my cousins lives there, who I love to death. And yes, so I'd go over there in a heartbeat. Absolutely. I think I was looking at potentially going later on in the year, just depending on jobs and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the weather here is almost unlivable, especially yesterday. I went to the beach, and normally I'm a 2 hour beach guy. I reckon I was there for 20 minutes.
Wow.
And then doing, I guess what would you call it? The lizard run up the sand because it's so hot, just
Hmm.
like
Trying to find the shade.
powering up as fast as you possibly can. Oh my God, it was a nightmare. So yeah, I think we could go for some cooler weather, but yeah, I would still prefer this to miserable, cold, cold London.
I remember when I last spoke to Annie Jones. I'll tell you this little story. She had not long been over to the UK for
Mm.
the Neighbours tour, which was, they toured around.
Ah,
Her and five other cast toured around the UK, did various shows at various like sort of arenas. Um,
yeah, cool.
During their trip, they came across some snow, and it was the first time Annie Jones had ever seen snow before. So they obviously got out and she had a little sort of play in it. But the first time she'd ever seen snow, and I couldn't believe, for someone living in the UK, that just seems weird that you'd never seen snow before. But yeah, she'd never seen it before, so that was her first time. So little story for you.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, funnily enough, a couple of years ago, I took one of my best mates down to Perisher, and he had never seen snow, and he was well and truly into his 40s. And yeah, I took my daughters and his daughter, we all went down together. And my youngest, she was like, as soon as we saw it, she was like, I'm gonna cry. And I'm like, yeah, cry, baby, let's go. So, but by day three, they were well and truly over it. I was like, you guys want to go snowboarding? They're like, yeah, I think we'll just stay here, eh, Dad? I'm like, well, we paid for it. I'm like, fine, fine, we'll go. So, you know,
Now,
all a
I,
bit of fun.
Now, I just want to say, Jason, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Of course, people need to watch Neighbours at the moment because it's getting so
Of
good.
course,
And
of
obviously, they
course.
need to see more of Clint. So, people here in the UK, they can watch it on Amazon Prime. It drops Monday to Thursday at 7 a.m. So, people need to keep watching. Obviously, it's on pretty much on everywhere nowadays,
Yeah.
all over the world. But I just want to say, Jason, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving up your time. And of course, keep safe. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Such a great job. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.